Let's talk about what last night's election result could mean for Canada's energy sector. We're joined now by Eric Nuttall. He, of course, is partner and senior portfolio manager at Ninepoint Partners, an expert in the sector. He runs a couple of funds devoted to the energy sector here in Canada. Eric, thanks a lot for joining us. Now, I know this was not the result you were hoping for. There was a period of time, of course, in recent Canadian electoral history when it looked like the Conservatives were certainly going to win. Everything changed when Justin Trudeau left and Donald Trump began attacking the country. What is your take on a Liberal minority government, which looks like where we will finish after last night?
Yeah, good morning, Paul. Good to be with you. We're still waiting to figure out details, of course. I think it's really, really important to distinguish what was said on the campaign trail versus what's going to be reality. Details were extremely light. We hear terms of, Canada needs to be a global energy superpower, then it pivoted towards a clean energy superpower. There's pros and cons. The punchline is I think this is really status quo. You effectively have the same team in place, at least, as who's governed for the past 10 years. We have now given the minority government status. The one positive coming out of this is the unlikelihood of an emissions cap actually becoming a law. This was floated right ahead of the election. Guilbeault had said that it was something they were likely to try to do, but given minority status, that looks like it's challenged. Unfortunately, too, what we've seen is the commitment to keeping Bill C-69 in place. This is the No Pipelines bill. It's my view that as long as that remains Canadian law, we will never see another pipeline built in this country again. There just seems to be a philosophical difference in terms of how we can move the ball down the field. And we've been pretty public in our views. It's critically important to grow our oil pipeline egress capacity to lower our customer concentration risk to the United States. It would put us in such a stronger position, but that just doesn't seem to be the case. And so Canadian production via the lack of pipeline capacity, I think will be limited in about 2 to 3 years' time. We'll be full pipe. So those are the gist. It kind of status quo, light on details, no emissions cap, but no elimination of Bill C-69. So cap production. And when we relate that back to energy stocks, then we're fairly bullish on oil over the medium term and long term. We're bullish on natural gas. So we still see a windfall of profits hitting this sector. A sector that can no longer grow, at least in a few years' time, then will once again place the priority of using that free cash flow to share buybacks, because we know the balance sheets are strong, deleveraging has occurred. They won't have the ability to grow in a few years' time, unfortunately. And so we expect the cadence and magnitude of share buybacks to meaningfully increase. You
do not think a Carney-led government will at least set the legislative table in favor of additional pipelines, additional natural gas pipelines running to new LNG plants?
C-69 makes that extraordinarily challenging, and that's why it was disappointing on the campaign trail when they affirmed that they would not be reducing it. My hope is that when Prime Minister Carney talks about being a global clean energy superpower, he's referring to natural gas. We know about the ability to decarbonize and lower emissions, and by benefiting from that, my hope is this isn't some, pursuit of going and adopting wind and solar and like low to no margin businesses that require, so-called investment, i.e. subsidies from the government, given that we're going to be adding on another $250 billion in debt for the next 4 to 5 years. So my optimistic view is a Carney win is status quo for a sector that has dealt with significant challenges over the past 10 years. C-69 means no oil pipelines. And so for our Canadian energy sector, at least in the oil sector, they'll be, required to remain disciplined in returning that free cash flow back to the shareholders in the form of share buybacks, because there will be nothing left to do with it. In terms of LNG, we should be a LNG superpower in the world. We're a little behind the curve, of course. That is changing. There's about 6 BCF a day of incremental export projects on the docket. And so my hope is what we're going to see is a slight pivot more towards the center, a recognition of the very strong role that the Canadian energy sector has on the Canadian economy, the championing of clean burning Canadian LNG, and the abandonment of putting on an emissions cap or / production cap on the sector.
What does the championing of clean Canadian natural gas mean if you are correct that no further pipelines are possible?
Again, this is to be determined. I'm waiting to actually get firm details. We got very little of it, details of any kind, frankly, on the campaign trail from the Liberals and their energy policies. And so we're waiting to see what it means. What we should be is exporting 6, 8, 10 BCF a day. The United States is now exporting 16. We have equally as large resource base. We're closer to the direct customers. They have flown here asking for that product. And so perhaps Carney, given his background, is going to be a little more pragmatic, we hope, in recognizing the business case. And so I want to convey to energy investors, I think this was a expected event. We're not expecting any material reaction in energy stocks. Clearly, the challenges of the past 10 years, even if they persist, we've dealt with it. Companies have massively delevered. Balance sheets are in very, very good shape. Free cash flow remains fine. And so anything at the margin, it's going to reinforce, again, just more buybacks.
Eric Nuttall, thank you a great deal for joining us today. Eric Nuttall is partner and senior portfolio manager at Ninepoint Partners.